What's up everyone, my name is Joris. Today we will buy a house, or at least look at the different financial aspects of buying a house. We will be looking at the different taxes in whole of Europe, the differences in fees and where you have to pay attention to when you are investing in real estate. And at the end of this video I will show you a calculation of all the costs and give you some tips and tricks of where I have had problems in the past. So you have decided to get a new place to live, or you are looking to buy a new investment property. There are a few things you will need to take into consideration when you are buying a property. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as paying the asking price and getting a loan from the bank. There are costs, fees, taxes on both the buyer and the seller side. Furthermore, every country has their own regulations. All of these extra costs and taxes have to be taken into account when you are buying a house. So, let's say you have found your perfect new home and you are thinking about buying it. Let's assume it's a not newly built property. It's worth around 250,000 euros and you are paying cash. So, without a loan from the bank, that is. The property is located in a major city and you are buying from an individual, not a company or a project developer. In this standard case, you will have 4 different types of fees and tax. The first being the registration tax. This has to be paid by the buyer to the government. Then we have the legal fees, such as the notary fees, paid by the buyer as well. Then the real estate agent fees. In most cases, this is paid by the seller to the real estate agency, of course. Prices here range from 1% to 5% depending on where you are buying. Then we have the sales and transfer taxes. Those are also paid by the seller, and this is often the value added tax when a property is sold. Since there are no countrywide regulations, all different countries have different costs and taxes. Some countries have no sales and transfer taxes and others have next to no registration fees. Some countries even have different costs and taxes depending on in what region of the country you are buying. It is majorly important to check with a local professional to know all of the taxes and costs you will have to face. To have a global overview, we can look at the round-trip transaction costs. These include both the seller's and the buyer's costs, both added together. As you can see, there is a huge difference between the countries. The middle and the south of Europe seem to have higher taxes and costs, while the northern countries have very low costs and taxes. Some countries have no costs for the seller, so everything is paid by the buyer. But other countries have higher costs for the seller than the buyer has to pay. I have put the link in the description to the different fees for all European countries for you to check out. You can even click through on each of the countries to see all different costs and taxes. If we assume a purchase of a property worth 250,000 euros, you will have to add those buyer costs to your buying price. And this is your basic price, your lowest price. If you want to use a mortgage to buy your property, there are also some bank fees and mortgage registration fees that have to be paid as well. And now for the bad news. Most of the European banks will not allow you to lend those extra costs. There are exceptions, however, where banks will allow a loan over 100% of the value, but those are very rare. Now for an example, here in Belgium we pay 10 to 12.5% registration taxes, depending on where you are buying in the country. This percentage can be lowered by 4% in Flanders if it's your first and only property, and by a further 1% if you plan energy-saving renovations. If you were to buy a protected monument, the registration fee can be reduced to a total tax of 1% in registration fees. Different rules apply for different uses and different places. Those are the standard rates here in Flanders. If you were to buy a newly built property, the taxes and registration might change altogether. There are no registration fees for newly built properties in Flanders. Instead, there is a 21% value-added tax. There is a registration fee on the land though, on the price of the land though. So as you can see, there is a maze of costs and taxes. So really do ask for help if you're not sure about the case. Most notary offices will provide you with the required knowledge. Let's dive into the numbers. If I am looking for a new property here in Belgium valued at 250,000 euros, I have calculated I need to add on average around 15% to the suggested buying price. This 15% includes 10% in registration fees for my location in Flanders. It would also be my second property, so I have no reductions possible on the new acquisition, on the registration fees. A total of 25,000 euros will have to be paid in registration fees. I calculate around 2% in notary fees. Notary costs consists of registering the deed, a fixed cost of around 1,300 euros, and their own fees, the latter being around 3,500 euros on a property of 250,000 euros. I used 5,000 euros for both together in my calculation. Getting a mortgage is always more interesting than buying a property cash, and you can check out my calculations in the video up there. When getting a loan from the bank, you will also have to pay the bank for the mortgage costs as well as the registration of the mortgage. The registration of this mortgage is again done by the notary and has a flat fee. The mortgage does not have to be registered in full. You can ask your bank to have a mortgage mandate. That part of the loan is not registered. It's just to give the bank the option to take full mortgage on your property when they think it is required. For example, when you are not paying off your mortgage. This is common practice and it lowers your mortgage startup fees by 1,000 to 2,000 euros. The bank will propose a certain percentage of the mortgage that can be put into a mandate, depending on how much you are earning, how credible your score is, what your age is, and so on. After these reductions, the loan fees should be around 4,200 to 4,500 euros. I'll take 5,000 euros as well in my calculations for the ease of it. After all costs are added up, I have 35,000 euros, or 14% of the buying price of 250,000 euros. As you might have noticed, previously I said 15%. I always like to have a small margin of 2,500 euros in case of any trouble. So if I want to buy a property valued at 250,000 euros, I put aside at least 37,500 euros for all legal work and registration. Unfortunately, that is not all. As a first-time buyer, you most likely won't be able to buy a property valued at 250,000 euros with a down payment of just 37,500 euros. As said before, banks sometimes allow loans of 100% or higher, but these are rare. Most banks nowadays require 80% loan to value maximum. This means you'll have to come up with another 50,000 euros extra down payment, or 20% of the value of the property, making your initial investment 87,500 euros already. Do you see why it is getting hard for our youth to buy properties as starters? Let's say you are able to scrape together the required 87,500 euros. You will be able to buy the house. Finally. But now you have an empty house, no furniture, no paint for the walls, and that old pipe in the kitchen is really leaking and has to be fixed. It is super important to have a sort of emergency fund apart from your own emergency fund to cope with costs like these. There will always be something wrong or missing in a newly bought property. A fully furnished apartment can easily cost a few thousand euros, and small fixes can add up quickly. Be sure to have at least 5,000 to 10,000 euros ready for the early investments in your property. You can always add more details later. But you don't want to sleep on a couch for the first few weeks. I have done that, and believe me, it's not worth it. So now you have saved up around 92,500 euros, so you're ready for the loan for your house. Another important thing to note is your ability to pay back the loan. You do not want the monthly mortgage payment to be much more than 40% of your monthly income. A monthly payment of 800 euros should really be the maximum for the average Belgian. The average Belgian's income is 1,800 euros after taxes. If you pay off 800 euros in mortgage every month, you'll have to take into account the costs of living, like insurance, heating, electricity, water, and so on. All in, this might be another 200 euros per month. So in total, you will be spending 1,000 euros on living per month, which is quite a big amount if you are living on your own. Of course, the mortgage paid off is not lost, but you cannot access that amount saved unless you are selling the house in the future. It is very important to have saved up enough money to start out your real estate journey, to make sure you are not in over your head. There is nothing worse than buying your perfect house only to realize you won't be able to pay it off, having to sell it at a foreclosure and losing quite a lot of money. Unfortunately, I have seen many of these cases in the past. So, to conclude, find a property you want to buy. Now look for and calculate the expected costs of acquisition for that property. Then ask your bank how much you will have to put in yourself as a down payment. Save up that amount of money and make sure you have a few €1,000 in hand when the deed is signed. Then make sure your monthly payments and costs of living are acceptable according to your monthly income. If all boxes are ticked, you are ready to buy your first or your new property. So in the next video, I will look for a new property myself. I will explain how I search, what I look for, and what numbers I use in my calculations. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like for the YouTube algorithm and to subscribe to the channel if you have not done that already. Destroy the notification bell to be notified when a new video comes online. I thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.